Hello, everybody. Greetings from Dayton. I'm Amelia.
I'm Tom.
All right, and we have a word for you today. So this is a gospel word from the Gospel of Mark. We're in the 9th chapter. Today's word follows right on the heels of last week. So Jesus is in Capernaum. He and his disciples have been out on the road, and they've come back to Capernaum, and then they're in the house and they're having discussion about various things. So Tom's going to tell us the story and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
So John said, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we stopped him because he was not following us." And Jesus said to him, "Don't stop him. Anyone who does a deed of power in my name will not be able soon thereafter to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us. And truly I say, I tell you, anyone, whoever gives you even so much as a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose their reward. But if any one of you puts a stumbling block, a source of scandal in front of one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to be offended and scandalized, cut it off. It's better for you to go into life with one hand than with two hands to be thrown into hell where the fire is never quenched. And if your foot causes you to be offended and scandalized, cut it off. It's better for you to enter into life with just one foot lame than with 2 feet to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to be offended and scandalized, tear it out. It's better for you to go into life with one eye than with 2 eyes to be thrown into hell, where the worm never dies and where the fire is never quenched. For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, how are you going to season it? So have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another."
All right, there you have it. All right, this is quite a story. We do definitely need to talk about this one. At the beginning, it starts with John reporting to Jesus about one of the things that he and his disciples have been up to on the road, I guess. So this is John, the disciple, the brother of James, one of the first 4 disciples. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So he sounds like a kind of a combination of outrage and maybe a little bit of self-righteousness, and as well as, wow,
Right.
look what we did, Jesus.
Right.
we took care of this guy.
Right.
But Jesus doesn't exactly affirm what they've done. So he actually corrects them. Rather, I mean, he's kind of amused by what they've said, just the way you told it. So talk about what's going on here. You know, why what they're upset about and why Jesus responds the way that he does.
Well, one of the things that is crucial about this story is the translation of a key word that is kind of the verbal thread running through this, which is translated stumble, stumbling block, if your eye causes you to stumble and so on. And so the first thing I think to recognize is that that is not the best translation. The best translation is to be scandalized or offended. As in the story of the preparations after the Passover, Jesus says, you will all be scandalized. You'll all be offended and run away. And Peter says, even if all of them are scandalized and offended, not me. So the meaning of the word here, I think, and its reference is to John's experience of being scandalized and offended by this other exorcist, and of Jesus saying, don't be offended. Don't be scandalized. Don't stop him. And so in very strong terms, he recommends to go to any length, cutting off your foot, your hand, your eye, in order to not be offended and scandalized by someone else who is of a different tradition or is maybe one of these little ones. So this is a major conflict, and where Jesus rebukes the disciples, just like he rebuked Peter when Peter took him aside, and Jesus rebuked him and said, "Get behind me, Satan." This is Jesus, disagreeing and teaching the disciples in the most aggressive manner.
Yeah, when I heard you tell a story, and my first thought is, this is not sweet Jesus.
No, this is not sweet Jesus.
Yeah. So the other day, my pastor he responded to, actually, that was kind of interesting because I was asking him about a little issue that was going on between our church and a certain organization. And I wondered, how that was going. Was it being resolved? He had a very similar reaction to you. He kind of smiled, and he said, "Sweet Jesus." And so, he had kind of a similar, interesting response to a conflict that was going on. Why would there have been conflict? I mean, Jesus says this line, which I think is fairly familiar: "Whoever is not against us is for us."
Right.
What's his recommendation there, and what are some of the sources of conflict that would have been going on in either in the early church or in Jesus's day when he was with the disciples?
Right. Well, first in Jesus' day and in the time of Mark, some 30, 40 years later, there was ongoing conflict between various sectarian groups within the religion of Israel, within the community of Jews. There were Sadducees, Pharisees, Essenes. There were the Zealots who pulled off the revolution that ended in disaster for Israel, the destruction of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem, the slaughter of over 1 million people around the world, but especially in Jerusalem at the time of the breaking of the siege. So there was a lot of conflict. And during the revolt, there was a lot of Jews killing each other in the temple by various zealot factions, people who were trying to get out. They'd get caught and they would be executed. So there's, in the background of this is sectarian conflict.
Okay. And we don't have any of that now, do we?
No. Conflict about religion, about sectarian differences? Yeah, no, everybody's.
All right. So Jesus is really super strong. I mean, these images, and they are, what do you call it? Hyperbole. They're exaggeration to make a point. Right. I don't think he's literally recommending that we cut off various body parts, but he's just saying it in the strongest terms, is that you shouldn't act this way. Right.
Right. Do
And
whatever you can.
yeah. So what, well, he says, whoever puts a stumbling block in front of one of these little ones. So you talked about that word stumbling a little bit, but what would first of all, what would a stumbling block be, and who are the little ones? He's not talking about children, is he?
Well, in the context of the story, the reference is a stumbling block is that when John, stopped him and, made him, forbid him to do it, he put a stumbling block in front of this guy who was casting out demons in Jesus' name. And so the immediate context would say that the little one of these little ones, is this guy who was new, who was not part of the disciples, but was a little one in faith, and that you should go to any lengths. It'd be better for you to have a great millstone tied around your neck, hung around your neck, and you were thrown into the sea. So right. Do what, so it's a strong rebuke of anyone who would cause one of these little ones. And I think the reference is to this other guy.
Yeah. So then after this metaphor of the millstone being thrown into the sea, there's this pattern that goes on. So if anybody, all of you who are learning this story to tell from the heart, you have, at this point, you have this pattern to follow that helps. So you have the cutting off of the hand, and then the cutting off of the foot, and then the plucking out of the eye. And in each case, it's better to do that than to go into hell, right? So Jesus is talking about hell, and it's pretty strong. Those are pretty strong images too, unquenchable fire, and there's a worm. What was his understanding, or what was the understanding of people in his day of hell? What did that mean to them? Where'd that word come from?
The Greek word here is Gehenna, and Gehenna was the valley, and it's not clear which valley it was, whether it was the Kidron Valley or the other valleys around Jerusalem, but there was a valley where in the old days, at the time of Ahaz and Manasseh, when there was the worship of the pagan god Molech, and Molech required the sacrifice of burning of children as an offering to him. And so Ahaz and Manasseh sacrificed their children. The word in the story in 2 Chronicles is they made them pass through fire.
Oh my gosh.
And
is that really in the Bible?
Yeah. Yep.
2 Chronicles, is that what you said?
Yep. I can give you chapter and verse if you want, but anybody can look it up. It's if you look in 2 Kings, it's Ahaz and Manasseh.
Okay.
So
that, I mean, there
was constant fire there, and then that became the garbage dump, in Jesus' day, and that got associated with hell, with the perpetual fire that was going all the time, and the stench of that, but also that it was the place that came to be associated with the place of punishment for the unrighteous, that they would be thrown into Gehenna, that is, into the garbage dump, where there were worms crawling around all the time and where there was fire all
things
the
were
time.
decaying. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Right. So
you don't want to go to Gehenna.
No.
And you don't want to be thrown into Gehenna like you throw garbage into a dump and burn it.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, this passage this teaching ends with Jesus talking, it feels like he's switching gears a little bit, but suddenly he's talking about salt and being salted with fire, and salt is good unless it loses its taste, and you are salt. And then finally, you are at peace with one another. So what was the business about salt? But also, I'm just thinking now, I remember something you were telling me about one of the interpretations traditionally of this story and how that differs from kind of what you're suggesting here. So talk about salt and one of the historical interpretations.
Well, what historical interpretation are you?
You were talking about how the business with the hand, the eye, the foot, and the eye, how that's been interpreted in the past.
Right. Now, it was interpreted as that it would cause you to stumble, it would cause you to sin. The category that is listed in the NRSV and in the Greek text for this story is temptations to sin. And that's how this has been translated, is if your foot causes you to be tempted to sin. And so one of the associations that was identified as the temptation to sin was sexual sins, the sin of the hand, what guys do, the sin of the foot, which was a synonym for the penis, and of the eye, the seat of lust. But that is based on, I think, a mistranslation and misinterpretation of the word to be offended, to be scandalized. So
yeah, and it also feels like it's taking it out of the context of the story.
Right.
They're not paying attention to what leads to this teaching,
Right.
and then how Jesus concludes it. Be at peace with one another. That that has nothing to do with sexual sin.
Right. So the salt business is that salt was associated with being salty, with being, tough, of saying salty things, so everyone's going to be, pass through salt. Everyone's going to be salted with fire. But salt's good. Salt's fine. But if it's lost its saltiness, what good is it? So salt is good. So be salty. Have salt in yourselves.
But is that kind of like chutzpah? Have some energy and don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Be salty. I'm salty. Is in the background. But be at peace with one another, so that your saltiness, which is in this case in reference to John's rebuking the other exorcist. Yeah, okay, fine, be salty, but be at peace with one another. So this is a discourse about helping John to frame his responsibility as a disciple, which is not to rebuke another one, to stop him, but is rather, be salty, but be at peace with one another.
Mm-hmm. A different approach to people who believe or think differently, or maybe just, talking to him a little bit about what other things about Jesus in this case. Because
it was present then,
it's
present now.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom. And
well, let me say just a little more about that.
Okay.
In relation to, ministries of peace and justice now, a primary ministry now is to help people keep the conflicts and the saltiness between different groups in perspective, and not to get to the point of, such utter hostility as has happened at times in the history of the church, where we, burn people at the stake. So this is a word that the community needs to hear now, to be at peace with one another. And yes, we can disagree, but not to the point of such utter hostility that we throw stumbling blocks in front of one another. So search for ways of disagreeing, but be at peace with one another. So this is a very, very relevant word for today, that Jesus is saying to us, I think.
All right, good. Okay, there you have it. Hope you can spend some time learning this story by heart or and meditating upon it. And God bless you all.
Right. Have salt. Be at peace. Right.